Oh, hey, didn't see you come in. I'm guessing you're here to talk about Power Automate and Business Central, right? You're in the right place. So, if you're like me, you've probably looked online on YouTube and other places on the internet, and you found a lot of videos and a lot of resources on Power Automate. But when it comes to Power Automate and Business Central, there's really not that many. And the ones that are there, they tend to cover more of approval workflow type scenarios. Another thing that um, you may have experienced depending on when you started playing with Power Automate. I started very early on when Microsoft first released the product, and when Microsoft had that early connector for the predecessor of Business Central. And it was good. It was a lot of fun, and I actually got to do some really fun, what I would call make-believe scenarios. Nobody was asking for them, but I'm just trying to figure out where and how could we use this. And then when the first version of that connector was sunset and Microsoft came up with a newer Business Central connector, I had some real struggles. One, it works very differently from the original connector. And what I also found out is that the new connectors from Microsoft were all focused around APIs. So anything that I was doing with web service endpoints from the web services page in Business Central, I just couldn't get that data seen in Power Automate or in Power Apps. I would go there and I would connect to my Business Central environment and company, but those custom web service endpoints just weren't there. And so I struggled with that. And when I talk about this connector has been around for a while. It's not something that's changed in the last 6 or 8 months that I'm talking about here. And and that kind of got me a little frustrated. And for some time, I just stopped altogether. Then I told myself, you know what, I'm going to figure this out. And looked around, looked at other videos and looked at documentation and tried and failed and tried and failed until I got it right. And for any of you who've come to my AL for Functional Consultant classes or workshops or my sessions at conferences, I have a certain way of teaching. And a lot of times I teach things in an effort to really internalize the things that I've learned. So when you learn something for the first time, you kind of understand it, you try it, and then if you don't use it for a long period of time, you lose it. Unless you go around and teach someone. And once you teach somebody, that really gets locked into your memory. So this video is probably as much for me as it is for you, but if you find it helpful, I'd be very happy. So what I want to do today is I want to talk about automated cloud flows. And these are cloud flows that run in the Power Automate side when something happens in Business Central. And it could be when an event occurs, or when a new record gets created, or a new record gets or a record that's already in Business Central in a table gets modified or deleted. There are all kinds of different triggers. So it's basically not running to a schedule, but it will run automatically when something happens. And when it happens, then you could have this Power Automate flow cause something else to happen, right? So there's an action or a trigger that occurs, and then there's a trigger that will occur, and then there's some action that you'd like to take place. And this particular scenario that I want to share with you today is a real-world scenario. It's pretty simple, but it is a real-world scenario from a client of ours that we recently had to do. And what I want to do too is talk about some of the realities that you get into. A lot of times when I see videos, those videos focus on just how to create the flow in Power Automate. I want to talk to you about how you would actually create the underlying things in Business Central and the supporting side of things in Power Automate, so you've got this whole solution end to end. So to that end, let's kind of go forward and just go through a very short description of the scenario. And that scenario is that when a job queue entry fails in Business Central, you want the administrator to be notified by email. Now, to that end, if you want to look at what happens when Business Central, when a job queue entry fails, essentially a record is created in the job queue log entries and or entries log. And from there, that record will actually indicate that the status is error, It will show you the starting and the end time. It will show you what type of object was running and what the object ID was. It will give you the object name, and it will also give you a description of the error itself or the error message. Really, it's got all the information that you need. So what we're suggesting here is, or what my client here needed, and why we ended up creating the Power Automate flow, is that they wanted to be notified when the job queue failed. But what was really interesting about the scenario is they weren't after every failure. There were some random failures that would happen once in a while, but they were actually more interested in a specific report that would run and fail periodically. And so they wanted to understand why that was failing. And so they wanted to filter out all the noise. Only give us notifications when this specific report fails. Or in fact, there were 2 reports if I remember correctly. So if this report or this report fails, show us send us an email with your message. And if something else fails, it's probably a one-off, and the administrator, at least in this scenario, did not need to or want to know about it. So what we had to do is we would have to expose the job queue log entries page in Business Central. Now, traditionally, when you were, if you've done any kind of integrations with Business Central and Nav, a lot of us would use web services, the web services page. You would go there, you'd add another entry in the web services page, right? You'd define your code unit or your page or your query. You would give it a service name and you would publish it. And that would give you an endpoint that you could then connect with. Now, in some connections and integration scenarios, you can still use it. If you're using Business Central Online, by the way, the Web Services Automation Key, or the WSAK method of authenticating when you're using or when you're trying to connect to a web services endpoint, that's been deprecated. So you do need to use the OAuth authentication method. With API pages, you get a couple of advantages. One, it's another way of exposing data from Business Central, but an advantage is that it is actually more performant, so things work faster. But you do have to actually create a separate page. So if you were exposing data from the customers or the customer table, you wouldn't just go ahead and pull data from the customer list or the customer card page like you would do in web services. You would have to create a brand new page. That page would be connected to the customer table. It would be a page of type API, and then that would be the page that would draw data out of Business Central for whatever integration you're doing. In this case, connecting and providing data to Power Automate. And there are a couple of tools out there. There is a tool from Eric Kugard. I think his Simple Object Designer can help you create API pages really quickly. You can make them from scratch in Visual Studio Code. Today, I will actually be doing it in Visual Studio Code, but instead of doing it from scratch, I'll be using a nice little tool extension that I have that's right within there that simplifies the process a little bit for me, and I'll show you that. So you will actually see me create the API page in Visual Studio Code. So it gives you a good idea of how you're going to do this. And then we're going to test and publish this into Business Central. In the interest of time, what I will not do in this particular video is I'm not going to move this this app that I'll create, or the per tenant extension I'll create. I'm not going to move this to a production environment. I'll just leave it in one of my sandboxes and have Power Automate talk to the sandbox. In your real-world scenario, after you create the API page and test it, you would want to move it from your sandbox to your production environment, and your Power Automate would talk to your production environment in Business Central. And the next thing we're going to do after we create that page and it's published is that we're going to go into Power Automate, and we're going to create a new flow. And there are different types of flows, and you're going to see how I do that or how I select it. And then once you've decided what type of flow you're creating, you will connect to Business Central. You'll identify who you are. You'll identify your environment, your company, and what endpoint you want to connect to. And then I'll show you how you can do things like use conditions and so on. And then we'll try as a failed report. Now, I don't have a report that fails. So what I'm actually going to do is use the planning worksheet or the calculate report for the planning worksheet, because that report's not meant to be run directly. It's kind of called through something else. So when you try to run that report directly, it just always fails because it's not meant to be run that way. So we're going to try with that. It gives us an idea of what happens when something actually fails, and we'll be able to see that firsthand. So that's our goal. That's what we're going to try to accomplish today. And so let's get started. Let's jump into Business Central and Visual Studio Code first. So what I want to do is I'm going to bring up, let me put my glasses on, and I am going to bring up a browser window, and here I'm logged into Business Central. Just refresh this page, and working just a little bit slowly. All right, here we are. So we're going to go into job queue entries. Okay. So when I look at job queue entries, these are some of the jobs that I've got right now, or the jobs or automation jobs that I've got going on. Now, what I want to do is look at where I can see the status or the run history and if they've been successful or failed. And that is coming from the job queue ledger or entries log page. And so you can look at that by going to the, should be able to look at that from more options and related job queue log entries, or another way was just to search directly for job queue log entries. Now, if I pull something when I'm focused on a particular record, or when selected a particular record, it's only going to show me the success and error messages associated with this particular highlighted record. While I'm here, what I want to do is use the page inspect tool, which you can get to from the gears icon or by Alt Control and F1. And when you do that, it's going to pull up the page inspection tool. And here I will see the table for job queue log entries for 74, or at least I know what the table is called. And when you're developing in Visual Studio Code, we don't as much need the table numbers anymore. And I also know, for the sake of reference, if I need to come back, what this particular page is called, right? So these things will help me out a lot. And then, what fields do I think I'm going to need? I'm going to need the status field. Since this is an automation, I don't care so much, and I just want to see more why it errored out and not who was running it when it errored out. I don't care so much about the user ID and description, but what I will probably care about is a object type to run, the object ID to run, the object caption to run. So in my email that gets sent out, I can identify all of that. A start and an end time. Start time is probably more important. End time, in some cases, could be valuable. Tell you how long it ran before it failed. And all the way at the end, there is an error message. Now, there's also a unique ID associated with this job queue entry, so we can carry that over too. Perhaps won't mean as much to the user, but for somebody troubleshooting, that could be useful information. So these are all the things that we want to capture from the job queue log entry table. All right. So we know what we want to capture from inside of Business Central, and we know we want to build an API page. So let's get with that. I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code. Let's go ahead and drag and drop that onto the screen. So here I'm in Visual Studio Code. Let's make this a little bit bigger. All right. And in here, let's start a new AL project. So Control-Shift-P and AL Go. I'm going to place this particular project in C AL, and we'll call this the how to job queue automate. Just something I came up with on the fly. We're going to hit enter. It'll ask us which target platform we want to connect to. I'm running Business Central 2023 Release Wave 2 on my Dev Sandbox, so that's the version I'm going to select. And this is a Business Central Online instance once again. And at this particular point in time, it's going to create the Hello World and the app JSON and so on. Now, If you have already connected previously to a Business Central environment, it won't ask you to authenticate. But otherwise, as you go through and select your cloud sandbox, etc., it may ask you to copy a code and connect to a Business Central environment. So over here, it's going to say to sign in, use a web browser and open the page. You can copy and open. And when you copy and open, it will actually open. If you have multiple browser windows or profiles open, make sure you've clicked on the appropriate one before you go into Visual Studio Code, because it's going to launch that in this particular instance here of your browser. So I already have that code automatically copied into my clipboard, and I'm going to paste that and hit next. And this is how it validates or confirms who I am and that I have the requisite credentials and permissions to be able to develop. So I'm going to hit continue. And after it's done, I can now close this particular window. I no longer need it. Now, if you are developing in multiple environments, let me just go ahead and move this. But if you're developing in multiple Business Central environments or different tenants altogether, you can clear this between different development work. So what you would do is do Control-Shift-P, Control-Shift-P, and AL clear credentials cache. So if you do that, it will stop or clear the cache of credentials, which would clear or flush out the login information that we just stored. Because right now, what it knows is that anytime you're trying to test or download symbols or debug, it's going to be against this particular instance, if you will, of Business Central, this particular tenant, and then whichever environment that you define in your launch JSON. All right, so let's get going. Let's go into launch JSON at this point in time. I tend to not like the startup object ID and startup object type unless I'm actually testing something on a particular page. This is an API page. I really don't have to test anything. So I'm going to remove these two lines here. I want my proper environment name. And so I can go and let's bring back this particular Business Central window and go into Gears and go to Admin Center. Now I'm going to do my testing here and all that in the environment called Sandbox. So this is what it's going to go to. If you wanted to go to a different one, you'd want to make sure that you are populating that information in launch JSON under environment name. So we'll leave Sandbox. That should be just fine. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do it in the other one that I had called AL Sandbox. As I think about it, I think I might have done something else that around the same type of example that I don't want to have repeat. So Sandbox is the environment type. My environment name is AL Sandbox, and then I can go into app JSON. Now here, you'd want to change your app name if you want to, give the default publisher. And you can have any other changes you want. Now, the next part is your ID ranges your app's going to work in. I like to put this in a high app range. I have other per tenant extensions that are there, so I'll probably just put this in like 89,998 to 89,999. Let's do that. Just while we're on this topic, if you want your source code to not be downloaded, you can mark this as false. Allow downloading source. Otherwise, it's marked as true here in this particular example. So up to you how you want to do this. And I don't really need the hello world page, so I'm going to delete this as well. Now, a couple of things before we go further. One, I've not yet downloaded symbols, so it's probably a really good idea right about now for me to do Control-Shift-P and download symbols. And that should not take very long, enough time for me to take a sip. Now, while this is happening, it's already downloaded the symbols, so we're good now. And then what I want to show you too is the extensions that I have installed here. And one of these extensions will make my life really easy when I'm trying to create an API type of page. So you have your AL language extension. The one that I have here in addition to that is the AZAL DevTools. Now I like this a lot. It's got some really nice wizards for anybody who's been doing development from back in the good old nav days. If you remember, how kind of the form designer was, it looks a little bit like that, and how you can select your fields that you want to drop into a page that you're creating, etc. It's really cool, nifty little tool, and so I would definitely recommend that if you haven't used that before. So back under my Explorer, if I typically want to just create a new page, right, or a new AL file, I would come over here, and then depending on what your naming conventions are, or what you want to follow, I would probably create like an API page, and so I'm going to say job queue log entries or entries.al, and then when I do this, I use my T-page snippet, and then I could kind of just go from there. And then, or if you have Waldo snippets, it's also got a page of type API. This also helps. Otherwise, I could just say page of T-page, and then it will kind of create a bit of a snippet for you to work with. And what you would find if you're doing one of those types of things is that you will have to then know all the fields that you need to use, and you'll also need to know all the properties that you want to use. And so if you don't know that, sometimes it can be really cumbersome. So what I've started to do, and why I really like that that other extension I was talking about, is that I can right click and say new AL file wizard, and then I could select the page wizard, and this starts to ask me in a very kind of wizard type of function, in a user-friendly manner, all the things that I would need on this particular to get this page created. So what do I want to call this object name? So this would be my job queue log entries, or I'm just going to call it log for here, job queue log API. Source table, and this is going to be where you select the job queue log entry. And what type of page is it? This is where you need to select API. And then you have to select some really important things. So I want you to pay careful attention here if you've never developed an API page. Some of these properties are important, right? So who's your API publisher? It would probably be you or your company, whoever it is. You want to make sure you do that. Because what you select here is going to be how you're going to be able to see some of this information when you're pulling these API pages in a tool like Power Automate or Power Apps or an external integration. So you have your API publisher, and then if you want to, you can group your APIs in different types of groups, right? So I could create for master records and other types of stuff, or I can say just whatever you want to do. There's some freedom here, so I'm just going to call this one DSWi automation. What version? 1.0 is just fine. Now, entity name and entity set name. I want you to think of, if something has a singular name, that one record, if this were the customer table, the entity name would be customer. Entity set name would be the group of them, customers. So that's what you're basically doing. So over here, it would be, you could call this the job queue log entry. And this would be job queue log entries. By the way, I prefer not to leave spaces. So, in fact, if I recall correctly, maybe you can't leave spaces, but that's a topic for another day. Application area is all that's fine. We're going to go to next. This is where it's really fun. So what it does here is it provides me all the fields that are on the table, and then I can cherry pick the ones that I need. So I'm going to capture the ID. I'm going to capture the status. I'm going to capture the object type to run. I'm going to capture the object ID to run. I'm going to capture the object option, or the caption rather, to run. I will capture the start date and time. I'll probably capture the end date and time. We already get the status, and what else would we need? We could probably need the error message, and maybe the entry number I'll take the description as well, but I don't think I really have a lot of need for that. Well, so if I don't have a need for it, let's skip it. Let's go back in here really quick and verify once again the things that we were interested in. Status, object type, object ID, object caption, start, end, and this is the entries page. Related, job queue, log entries, status type, ID, caption, start, and the error message. So I think we got everything we need here, so we can move forward. And if I want to apply any flow filters or use them, I do that. Otherwise, I can just finish this. And so what's really cool now is the page is done. And most of the properties that you're going to need are already there. It's really up to you if you want to clean up some things and whatnot. I mean, there are a couple of things that I always like to do, so I'm going to do that. And one of those is the data access intent rather, and editable. Actually, before I do that, I should probably do editable. And that would be false because I don't need to be editing records here. So I'm just going to do that. And then the data access intent. It would be well, my actions for data access, I think it would be read only, read write. So we'll take read only. So that ought to do that. Another thing that I like to do is something that's been recommended on the documentation for Business Central. So normally when we are pulling a record in Business Central, every record in table has a primary key. So if you're thinking from a very simple perspective, a customer table, then the customer's number is usually that unique value that defines a record, and that would be your primary key. In the case of API pages, when you're pulling data to be able to be used by an external source, in addition to that, you also need to define its own OData key field. So that is really important. And so one of the things that I would suggest you do over here is define that proper API key. So what you want to do over here is first you can define over here field ID rec.id. I would recommend based on the documentation that was there, and I just got in the habit of doing and calling it system ID. So, all right. And then over here, you would add another quick, before the layout, you can add another property, which is the OData key fields. And you just define what those are, and that's only system ID. So that should be one more field that helps it. Everything else is probably exactly as you need it. You shouldn't need to worry about much else. I can save all. And really at this point, I am good to publish this particular page. And we're going to go ahead and publish that. We're going to debug/publish this. So hit F5. So it's trying there. It's probably if I go into my extension management, this is the one that we just pushed out, how to job queue automate. So this is now here. So that means that the API page we're looking for should be available. So that concludes that first part. Right now we've got the API page in here. I'm going to stop debugging. I'm done. And I don't need anything else over here. In a production environment, what would you do? You would also want to then move this particular app or publish this app once you've tested it into your production environment. Now to test it, you would probably go through some scenarios with Postman, make sure everything works, and so on. But because of the nature of what we're trying to do here, and we're really only reading information, I'm fairly confident, I'm quite comfortable that this would work exactly as I intend for it to work. So I don't need to do much else. So at this point, I'm going to move my Visual Studio Code off my screen. I'm done here. And what we're going to do next is go back to my Business Central environment where I am. And at this point, or my browser rather, and I'm going to go into my Power Automate. Now I'm in Power Automate here. On the home screen, you've got all kinds of options for learning and whatnot, but let's focus on how we would create a flow. Oh, by the way, if you don't know how to get to Power Automate, now you go to make.powerautomate.com, or if you're already in one of the Office 365 or Dynamics 365 applications, you click on your app launcher, and you can go to Power Automate from here, or you can just bookmark it as well. With Dynamics 365, your license, or Business Central, you also get a license for Power Automate and for Power Apps, and there are also all kinds of different ways of licensing Power Automate that you can choose. Over here in the Power Automate, if I click on Create, it's going to show me the different types of flows I can make. Very quickly, automated cloud flows, as I talked about before, is where you are waiting for something to happen in one application or one service. And when that event occurs, whether it's a new record being created or something else, that would trigger the workflow to kick off. There are instant cloud flows where you could push a button or perform an action to make that happen. There are physical buttons out there. There's a company called Flake.io that they sell physical buttons that you could press, and the pressing, double pressing, or triple pressing, or long press, each of those could trigger a different type of workflow to be kicked off. Or you could download the Power Automate app on your phone or your tablet, and that app also has a virtual button that you could use. You could have scheduled cloud flows and a few other types of flows, but in today's exercise and what we're trying to accomplish, that would be best done if I were to use a automated cloud flow. So I'm going to click on that here, and this would prompt us to give our flow a name. Let's just call this our job queue error notification. And then I have to pick what system the trigger is going to originate from. And so I can type in Business Central. And be careful when you're looking for Business Central that there are Business Central online triggers as well as Business Central on premises. So the green background arrow at this point, the icon with the green background, that's Business Central online. If you see one with a white background or a clear background, that's typically the Business Central on premises. So I'm going to go with when a record is created, and we'll create an automated cloud flow. It gives you the very first thing here. And there's some very cool things with Copilot as well, not in today's scope, but perhaps another time I'll do a video on that. They'll say invalid parameters, and that's because it really doesn't know how to connect to or talk to Business Central. So what I would do over here is select the environment. And remember, we published our extension in the AL sandbox. Then I need to select the company that I would like to track this in. It's the Cronus USA company that I'm in. If I want to verify that, I can always go back to, I think I shut down the particular environment. So let's go back and open this here. You can check what company you're in. I notice when I'm recording, sometimes these things move a little bit slowly, but I'm in Cronus USA Incorporated. So I've got that. And then the API category. So this is where, if you recall, we were talking about the different types of APIs that we can publish. So I have other APIs that I've previously published in this environment, but the one I care about is the DSWi automation category. And then the table name, this would be the specific API page that we created, job queue log entries. So this is how we establish a connection. Now, the next thing we're going to do is what happens when a record is created. And we want some things to happen. Now, one of the most interesting things about this particular connector that I struggled with early on compared to how the very original connector for BC, for Power Automate worked, is when you say this particular table or this particular page is where we're going to pull the data out from, I find, give me 1 second, by the way, I also want to split on trigger outputs body value. This is something I prefer to do. But anyways, when we do that, if I then try to go ahead and read the data that's in this particular record, it doesn't really know what to do because all I'm telling it at this point is we are connecting to this table. But this table can have multiple records in it, right? You could have 1 error message or 5 error message or 2 success messages or some combination. So it hasn't gotten a specific record yet. So I need to actually then tell it what record I need from here. So when a record is created on that table, this will kick off my workflow. And then I need to get a record that I desire. So I'm going to add an action. This next action is going to again be for Business Central. And scroll down a little bit. And this is where it's talking about the white one. This is Business Central on premises. This is my Business Central online or in the cloud. And so this is where I'm looking for the get record. So get record, once again, I have to define all of the information I previously defined. So AL Sandbox, the company is Cronus USA, the API category that we talked about. In this case, it's my DSWi automation. And then my table, which is the job queue log entries, and then the row ID. Click in it and then use this particular icon here, the lightning bolt, and you're now going to be seeing the only 3 things that are available at this point in time. And that is the environment name, the company ID, not the company name, by the way. So if in your email or something you want to actually show the company name, this would not be the one to use. And then the body row ID. So this would be the system ID of the Business Central record. So recall when we were creating the API page, we had the system ID. And so it's basically going to be pulling that information. And with that, it's going to be able to pull a certain record that we want to see, or even fields if we want to see in the table. Before that, we weren't able to see that. If you look over here, it will not tell me what fields are available in that API page that we created. If you recall, there are 7, 8 fields: a status field, start time, end time, the error message itself, and all of those. None of those are showing here. It's only environment name, company ID, and row ID. So to get all of that, I need to actually be able to, first I have to do this get record. Now, once I have done this, why did it not like it? Something. There we go. Let's start there. Okay, that ought to now have enough information about fields and so on in case I need to. Now, let's just assume for a second there were no conditions, that I just wanted to go ahead and anytime there is a new record in my job queue log entries that I would want to get notified. So what would I do here? I'd click on the plus icon and then I would add another action, and that action can be send email. By the way, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can have an email sent from Office 365 Outlook, or just a notification. If you do a notification will happen inside of the Power Automate app itself. Now, notifications also has an email, and this is a way for you to create a notification, and the email will also go to you. But if you want to have the email go to somebody else, a group of people, and there's a bigger, nicely formatted body and so on, I would always recommend the Office 365 Outlook option. This is the one I'm going to use over here. And so I'd say, this was wrong. I was trying to do send email here, not get email. So don't like this particular one. Let's, by the way, this icon over here will fit into my view. And I can right click here. I'm going to delete this. This is not what I'm looking for. And also zoom out a little bit. It's gotten a little too big for my liking. So once again, add action. Just this time we'll just say Outlook 365. So send an email. The last time I accidentally picked get email. So over here, then I could choose who I want to send an email to. I'll say custom value. Now this could also have been pulled dynamically. You can pull some of this information from somewhere else in Business Central, maybe a customer record or some other thing that's defined maybe on the company information page. But here I'm just going to hard code that. And the subject can be something like, job queue failure notification. And then the body of my email, I might want to drop some dynamic fields. This, for now, I won't type in a lot because I'll do some of the formatting and stuff later. But if I wanted to pull some fields from the job queue log entries, here is now all those fields because I did the get record. So I can see the ID, the status, the object type to run, the object ID to run, and all those other things that we exposed from that API page. Prior to that, if you recall, it was only showing these three things. Now, recall the scenario we defined. The scenario was that we want to get a notification when something errors out. And in my customer specific scenario, in fact, there was even a couple of specific records that, or specific reports when they error out, we wanted to be notified. So this is where you can be specific. You have to create conditions and all. So what we're going to do is we are actually not going to follow on with this particular option. Let's right click and we're going to delete this. All right, so what I want to do next, I want to do another get record. And the reason I want to do another get record is what I mentioned earlier regarding the company ID. Right now, if I were to use that particular reference, it would actually not give me a company name. It would give me an alphanumeric GUID for a company, and that doesn't really help me much. So I can even insert that between this get record and the when record is created. So I can insert this before or after. I'm just going to add that before. I'm going to call this Business Central. There'll be another get record we're going to do. And this time the get record will be all these things. The first few will be all the same. The company, the API category will be different though. This is one where I would use a Microsoft automation version 2.0. And there is one that would let me pull the list of companies or the company name. And so over here, I can say I wanted to match the company ID. So this would get me the information I need, the company name and whatnot. By the way, let's go back and check in on this. I think it says it has a problem with a connection, so can't sign in. Fixed connection. I think it probably just needs to re-authenticate. I haven't built a flow in this particular environment for some time, perhaps. So I'm just going to go through this process. Normally, if you've previously logged in, it should keep that connection running. Or if you have never logged in, it will ask you to sign in and everything should work the first time. It wouldn't give you an error message like you saw right here. So we have all the information we need. Now the next thing we're going to do is create a condition. So we want to define when this flow runs, right? So don't run it if it's successful. We also talked about maybe a couple of reports. If it fails, then notify it, otherwise don't. So let's go to conditions, and that is by searching for another action called condition. So it's an in-app control. And here you can say what conditions it needs to follow, and then what happens if it's true, and if something needs to happen when it's false, what do you do? So I would say when the status, and instead of typing it in, I could select this. So when the status is error, Another condition would be my when object type is report. Now, if I need just one specific report, it only notify me when one thing fails, I could be very specific and set object ID to run, and I could give a report ID. Here I could type in the number of the report. Or if I selected the object caption, then I could do the caption itself. However, in this particular scenario that we'd done for my customer, we needed to focus on this report or that report. Only those two reports. If anything else, don't send a notification. Not interested to be notified about that. So what we would do below here is create a add group. So what this group says, everything up until this point is the conditions are this and this must be true. So status must be error and object type must be report. But the object ID can be one report or another report. So here I'm going to start typing in the object IDs to run. So one of those object ID is, and if I go back into Business Central, I am going to go to job queues and we'll actually start creating a couple of job queue entries. I'm going to pick one, like I said at the onset, I'm going to pick one that I know fails. So we're going to make new report, and the object ID to run, I'm going to select and search. Going to be the planning worksheet. Calculate planning worksheet. All right. So this one, and I'm not going to bother with the request page. I know it's going to fail. I'll set earliest start date time today, and probably just run every day. Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. So just have it run every day. It's a recurring job, and so on. And then I'm going to mark this as status, set status to ready. Eventually, I'll mark that. I don't want to do that right now. I'm just going to mark this, leave this on hold. But I will capture this particular report ID. And then I'm going to go back into my Power Automate here and paste this particular report ID. The other report ID that perhaps, or the other time I want to be notified, I can select another object ID. Once again. And let's go create another one. In fact, why don't we just grab the telemetry management one? So instead of creating another one, we'll go, no, we need to do report the way we've set it up. So let's just create another one here. And this one could be my aged accounts receivable report. Now, these are not the specific ones that were failing in my customer's environment. So I'm just picking some random ones with certain expectations. And I could go and set a report request page, age that's off. I'm just going to set some standard things and that should be okay. And also mark this to run with today's date. Probably this just runs Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Still a recurring job, but so that's two reports. And so this is 10040. Let's go put that in. And what I'll also do is I'll schedule another one that I know will fail, but it's not going to be one of these two reports. So the behavior that we'd expect is if this report fails, we want a notification. If this report fails, we want a notification. I'll have another report just for the sake of making an example, a report that I know will fail, but we do not want to be notified when it does. So we'll create another report here. And this one is the requisition worksheet. And the reason this requisition worksheet will fail is because I've got, I won't put in a starting date for this. So without a starting date populated, it's going to have an error. And so it will fail to run, but we will not be provided any notification of its failure. So Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. Let's just kind of take these 3 days as well. So this one, report 699, we will not get notified. Now going back in here, so we've created this condition now. If the status is error and the object type is report, and the object ID is this or this, then do something. If it's not, just ignore it. So I'm not going to put any condition under false. I only want an email to be sent when it's true. If it's false, I just wanted to kind of terminate the self and not move forward. Now I'm going to create another action in this group here, and this one will be to send an email. So Office 365 Outlook. And see more if you're not seeing the ones you're looking for, and this will be the send email. And if I have a connection issue, I can say change connection, add new, sign in. I think when I did it in the other tab, I'd never refreshed this tab afterwards, so it probably just hadn't worked. But let's see. This ought to now take care of the issue. And if you want other fields, you can actually see there's things like CC, BCC, and so on. And you can populate those as you need to or show all of them. I want my importance to be high on this, so that's going to be important for me. And then subject I put in as a job queue failure notification. And this is to inform you that the job queue has, or there is a failed job queue entry. Details are shown below. And then I can start populating things like company, and I can populate my company's name, display name if I like, and then I could do environment. And I could have my environment name. So this could show what environment the issue is coming from. And then I can have the status, or before we do status, let's just go ahead and grab all the fields that we need. So object, let's just go status, and we would like the object type to run. We would need the object ID to run, the object caption to run. In probably the next line, we'll take start date, end date, time, and we could probably take the error message, and we take the ID. Now we'll make this a little user friendly. I want to make this bold. I want to make this below bold. And I could add the status. And it could be, say, object, and this could be the object type, object ID. I probably can insert a little comma between them and a space, so it will show my report and the report ID, and then a comma, and then the caption. Then I could say start and end time. Error message, ID. And I could add a little thing that says this message was generated by Power Automate, or something along those lines. Do not reply to this message or something else if you want to do it. So it will send all of this, and I just realized in this particular example, I'd probably be better served if I use my D365 BC Hub email the tenant I'm in, because I've got my work Outlook shut down. This is a demonstration account here, so we could use this, and at this point, I have now created essentially the entire flow. Now, before I go and I test anything, what I could do is first do a flow checker or save. If there's an error, saving will also run a quick internal test. Now, what it's checking is not to see if it'll provide the right field information or whatever. It's just checking to see if a connection's broken or if I have, put in a bad command or something along those lines. So now it's been saved. You can do a flow checker. No errors were found. If you test it, because it's driven by an event, there's really no way for it to properly test it unless you trigger that from your side. So what I'm going to do here, there is a way for you to trigger the event in Business Central and test that here, but I will actually take you straight to my email as a new email comes in. So this is now ready. It's working. I can go back to the previous screen if I wanted to. It just kind of shows you the 28-day run history. It shows me that my flow is turned on. I can turn it off if I need to. It shows the connections that are in use and a whole lot of other information. What I want to do now is I want to go back into Business Central, and I want to go into these different entries that I have. So we're going to turn this status to ready. And as you know, anytime you turn a status to ready, especially if it's supposed to run today, it will do a quick run. So it should start to run. And if I were to go and look at the related job queue log entries, I should start seeing an error message, because I know what's going to happen is this particular, if you've been around Business Central or if you've ever done any development work, you know that this report is not meant to be run directly. So it will say you must decide what to calculate and so on. And so this is the cause of the failure. So this is one error message. I'm also going to turn this one on. This one will not result in an error message. I think it just kind of refreshed the page itself. So I'm going to come over here. Age accounts receivable. This is set to ready. This should very quickly finish running. And if I go to related job queue log entries, this should show this was successful, 10040, so there's no error here. And then if I go to the other one that I created, the 699, I accidentally turned that on while the page was refreshing. So if I go here, I can see that this job log entries will show an error. And in this particular case, calculate plan requisition worksheet, it'll say it's missing a starting date. I did not populate the request page when I was trying to, when I scheduled this. So I've got two errors, one success. I know one of these errors should not be sending out an email. So now, if I were to go back down and go in, let me bring my email. I've got it open in another place. So let's bring this over here. These were some other pinned emails, but 11:27 p.m. at this time where we are, it sends me one email. This is to inform you that that there is a failed job queue entry. Details are shown below. I got to go check. I think maybe the display name for some reason, why they did not populate. I'll go and check what's going on there. But my environment name and my error object, it shows me the start and end time, my error message, and the ID of the error, and the email was automatically generated by Power Automate. So it shows me the full information that is there. If I were to go back into, or even refresh this page in case something else has been shown, I'll notice that nothing else should be coming. That other 699 failure, the requisition worksheet one, just will not be something that is going to ever result in an email, because we excluded that in our conditions. So with that, let's go back into Power Automate. Going to edit this really quick and see if I missed something obvious. with the company name. Let me actually first start off by going to the get record. Yeah, we got the then the send email. Try this. If that doesn't work, I'm probably making a small mistake here, and I can figure that out later. That is not the most important part of the exercise. So the most important part is being notified of the error. Let's go ahead and we'll save this. And what I'm going to do is go back into Business Central, and I will trigger. I'll set this to set and hold. And edit this one. And then prompt it to just status ready again. This should force another run. And if I go to my job queue log entries very quickly, I should see a. By the way, if you go to job queue log entries this way, it will show you all of the job queue log entries, not just the ones for the highlighted record. So this is at these are all kind of API webhook notification sends. We don't care about this. This was the original set of failures we had at 12:27 and at 12:31, which is the time right now. It's 12:32 local time. So this is 1 minute ago it failed. So there's another error. If I were to go back into my email, now I have a second email that just came out. This was the original one. This is the new one. This time it did populate my name. So maybe I've got something going on with the display name field, but the company name field did actually provide me the right information I was looking for. So this is the one. And so that's it. This was how simple it was to do what I was trying to do. Go back into my Power Automate window once again. My flow is there. Everything's running good. By the way, if you ever decide you don't want to use a flow anymore, you can very quickly and easily turn it off. There are analytics and other things too that you can look at it, but you can turn it off over here. That would prevent the flow from running. If you, also the other thing I'll do over here for my sake and my sanity, this is a demonstration environment. I'll also go back over here. I'll put these on hold. I don't really need them to run every day. And these could kind of start messing with other things that I do in here. So let's just put all of these on hold. And with that, really, I think that kind of brings us to a good stopping point. If I come back in here, we exposed the job queue log entries in Business Central via an API page. I showed you how you can create your automated cloud flow in Power Automate. We ran it. You see how easy it was to do all of this. And I hope you got some benefit from seeing how an API page is created and how you can actually then use that. Now, frankly, when I went back and I looked at so many of the YouTube videos that are on Business Central and Power Automate, those are one of the things that weren't there. A lot of the examples would either take one of the 40-some Microsoft created API endpoints. It would take a lot of the approval workflows that scenarios that exist in Business Central. And I personally find, I think more often than not, you would need to expose something else in Business Central that Microsoft's not already made an API for. Whether it's a custom page or in this case, job queue log entries is very much a standard page or a standard table in Business Central, but you needed to still expose that so that you could get a notification. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me by email. This is haa@dswius.com. You can scan my QR code that will take you to my LinkedIn page. You're welcome to communicate with me there. You can follow me or add me as a connection. Also on Twitter, I've recently changed on Twitter or X. I changed my handle from AJ Ansari Nav to AJ Ansari X. It's been BC for some years, and Twitter is now X, so I thought that would make for a good way to good change for the name. You can learn more about DSWi at www.dswius.com. I'm a Microsoft MVP since 2018, and I love to share things that I learn. And I think part of being an MVP is being an evangelist and a sharer of knowledge with the community. So I hope this was valuable to you. I look forward to hearing your feedback, your questions, your comments. If you have any ideas too about what you'd like to see in a future video, I would love to get some suggestions from you. Stay tuned, come back again soon, and have a wonderful day. Bye now.